Hello friends and welcome back. We're going to be continuing along here with our typewriter. Just as a little bit of an update, I'm still a little bit sick. Not as sick as before, so I'll still be coughing a little bit throughout this video. But it's not going to be as bad as before, which is nice. But more importantly, we're back on track with what we're going to be making here. We're finally back to this long cylindrical piece. We're going to be cleaning up these parts in this video, which is nice. And then once we are done those, we're going to be sort of continuing along with the underbelly of them. So essentially trying to complete this cylindrical piece, because once we're done that, we're getting to the ends, and then before you know it, it's going to be done. Not too much left, like I said at the end of last part, before we dive into the keyboard and the guts of things. Where it's going to probably become a bit more difficult and I'll have to do a bit more planning off camera. But regardless, let's just enjoy the easier times while we have them. Yeah, so we previously already put together a decent amount of this. There are some adjustments that I do want to make to it just by observing this reference. I think our positioning is fine. But I do think that, like, if we zoom out of this, I'm going to turn off wireframe. This seems to be a bit larger, and so does this sort of bump. But for the most part, everything else seems like it's lined up pretty well. So yeah, just very subtle changes. Nothing too crazy, nothing that's going to take too long. Alright, so we did separate that. Let's start by isolating this and trying to make these parts bigger. I'm trying to think of the best way to do that. Maybe we could grab these faces here and grow selection with a shift period. Then just deselect all the faces we don't really need. I'm just trying to get these semicircles on their own. Let me test something. Actually, if I grow that, it's not going to work. What we're going to actually need is, I'm pretty sure maybe even just these rings on their own, because then if we grow them, it's not affecting as much. We could even opt to get rid of these. No, it's probably more important to get these in here and then do some manual adjustments later. Yeah, it's pretty, like, there are some issues with this not being continuous, but I don't think that really changes anything. The silhouette is almost identical as to how it was before. And that now allows us to essentially scale these up quite a bit more to match the reference. Just making sure there's no clipping. Nice, and that's matching the reference quite a bit better. This part's already good. I might as well go and clean it up since we are returning to it. And to clean it up, I'm just getting rid of these verts. Kind of an unnecessary loop of them here. So just grabbing these guys and snap them over. The back, yeah, the back has them as well. Let's just continue up to the top. Snap these guys over. Seems like they're not totally even. I guess we're gonna have to do them one at a time here. That's totally fine. Just sort of continuing along all the way through. Definitely not the most fun, but it's just going to save us some time later. If we're going to have to do it later on, might as well get it out of the way now. Did I mess something up here? Yes, okay. I snapped it to the face in front by accident there. Always good to double check this stuff before you end up doing a merge, because that's a lot more complicated to clean up at that point. And pretty much there. Nice. Can go ahead and merge those vertices together. Gonna auto smooth it. And there we go. So what we're gonna be doing now is having this connection piece where it seems to be sort of bolted onto here, like a second piece. It goes to the side, up, wraps over, and then underneath reconnects while this pole goes through. I believe this mechanism, well, we can't see entirely what it's doing. It's mostly for securing this pillar in place. And then it's just duplicated over. So we don't have a whole lot to do on the side. And then on top of that, we can just duplicate it over when we're done, which is going to be a big time saver for us. I kind of want to make this a bit thicker. We can get started on that right away. So first things first, let's get this sort of 7 or L shape. Quick way to do that is, of course, we can use our smart mesh, smart duplicate face tool. Center pivot on that guy. Just holding shift, we can extrude out. I'm going to snap that right in front. Just as another explanation as to why I do it this way and not just extrude forward. Once these are two different pieces and they're inside a ZBrush and we soften both of them. Oh, I need to fix that. And we soften both of them. We're going to sort of see like a distinct breakup between the two of them, which we won't see if they are just the same mesh. So that's why I keep it as a separate one. But yeah, let's start working on that shape a bit more. So just extruding this out. And then it extrudes up into that 7 looking shape. So we got that guy. It seems to, yeah, pretty much come right to the tip top of this. So we're doing pretty good in that sense. We do need to fasten this in with 2 different bolts here. So to get them directly symmetrical, what I'm going to do is add an edge loop in the middle, like we've been doing, but holding shift, of course, to snap it. And I snap it at 50%. We can then poke face both of these so we know a vertex is placed in the exact middle of each half, which we can then snap our Boolean mesh to, which should take no time at all to do. Let's go ahead and set that up. Let's get a cylinder in here. Just gonna rotate it. Let's drop the segments down since it's such a tiny piece. I'm gonna go for 16. And just scale this up a bit. Duplicate it over and snap it, and we might as well make these two the same mesh. Weird that I'm in the rigging tab, but mesh combine. Let's go ahead and isolate these two so we have a better idea as to what we're doing. I don't want it cutting in too deep, just enough for us to rest a bolt in there naturally. And then just freeze all the transformations and delete history, just so that I can feel a bit more confident going into this Boolean that there's no weird history or I guess transformations that are causing it to behave in any way that we don't want. It's just sort of like a safety precaution. So then once again, we can just delete these edges to keep it clean. There's lots of space for these cuts to sort of be sealed away. Those edges would have just been cutting in at really awkward random places. So let's go ahead and do new Boolean. I'm going to opt to manually push this in a little bit more, and then clean up, delete history and base objects. So that's all that takes. Pretty quick and easy. We're going to go ahead and put our bolts in. Just a standard straight single line bolt, just sort of emulating what's displayed here. And snapping that to the middle. Same treatment as before. I'm going to make it red so it's easy to remember that it's there. Pull it out a little bit, give it a rotation, and duplicate one over here, and set it up like so. Yeah, that works. As long as they're not even, get some visual difference in there. As for this piece that's wrapping around, it is kind of an odd shape. I just want to confirm with another one. Yeah, I guess they all had that kind of lumpy, rounded shape to them. Kind of weird. It's not something you'd normally expect to see in a mechanical piece, I guess. But I'm just going to add an edge loop, a thin one, where we can extrude that out of. And it kind of looks like it's just coming out of the top. Let's try that out. Does this seem... Yeah, that seems like the appropriate thickness. So it seems to come out... Excuse me. Come out... and I guess I should just kind of get the basic shape of it before I do anything. So the basic gist of it is that it comes out and rotates down to be flat. Kind of near this area. And then the pole sort of goes through it. So now I'm just working on the roundness of the shape. I guess I can keep it here so we can all sort of look at it together. I'm going to start by thinning this out and then making this bigger so that we can sort of give it that rounder shape. Down here seems to be a bit odd. It seems to round out like so. I'm going to try and bevel that. See how that looks. It's almost there. Definitely going to need some work. Some weird... I'm going to undo that. Seems like something's off. These are straight, which they probably shouldn't be. Seems like it's kind of concaved in a little bit. And this is getting annoying, so I'm going to isolate this. So it's definitely more concave. This is a much more exaggerated plump shape, which then kind of goes down and then rounds out again at the end. So let's try and do this again. It's weird how it's letting me extend it further than it's supposed to go. Regardless, that's more or less the shape. I think I need to exaggerate this a bit more and really bring it up. And then with this, calm it down a little bit more. This also seems like it goes down and around, which I could further emphasize. Kind of like so. And then I think this is the missing piece. It kind of never goes down that much. It's more like so. Let's go with that for now and just position this cylinder that's going through and see how it all is relative to one another. So create polygon primitives, cylinder. Rotate that 90 degrees. Just kind of snapping into position. With this one, it's not a perfect cylinder, so we don't really have a place to snap it to. But eyeballing should be fine. Let's go ahead and snap that to this end. And then just put it pretty far down there for now. And just try and emulate the size. I'm also still looking at this and kind of want to play with it a little bit more. A bit more like that, yeah. So something like that. And just by looking at the reference, I want to make sure it's still pretty much at the top, like it's not too far put back, which I think this is positioned more accurately, I guess. Maybe more like here. I'm also looking at this reference for it. So I'm going to be kind of looking at this angle and positioning this based on it. And then we can make adjustments to that connection piece. So it's kind of more like this, like just on the edge of falling off the back. It seems a wee bit thicker. So now that we know that, we can essentially grab these. I'm just putting soft select on and turning it up. Once again, that's by pressing B, and then B and holding middle mouse can affect our radius for it. And I can just sort of pull this into place. Turn it off by pressing B again and manually sort of smooth a lot of this stuff out. Okay. And I guess the size like this kind of seems to be the same. So we look at it from an angle. Yeah. I think ours was just a bit too small before. So we can also adjust this. Okay. Nudge that guy, and that should do that. So let's go ahead and save really quick. Cool. What we have to do from here is kind of extrude it out, connect it up, and then we're ready to duplicate it to the other side. I think it'd be easier if we made this side of the connection piece and pushed it that way and merged it. Rather than vice versa, just because it's more difficult to work with these rounded shapes than we'd probably start this with like a cube or something like that. So let's get one of those in here. We can isolate this just so we know where we can snap it to. Cool. Just leave that there so you guys know what I'm trying to get at. I'm just sort of scaling it appropriately. I'm going to start off by grabbing those two edges and beveling them so we can round it. I'm going to merge the vertices, and then I'm going to kind of want to use my soften tool and adjust the shape a little bit. It doesn't seem like it's perfectly round. It's a bit more flatted off at the top. And the bottom also kind of seems like it's narrower. So kind of more of a shape like that. Right? Gonna grab this face on the bottom and pull it up, simply so I can extrude down again and have a place to push this forward. So now that we have access to this face here, we can slide it forward, and we can find a fun way to try and connect these two. I'm also going to shrink the size of this quite a bit. So we can shimmy this around a little bit. Also gonna widen this a little bit, but we gotta find an interesting way to essentially connect these two. Well, either way, we're gonna have to start by deleting this face because we're gonna be merging these verts into something. Let's see what we have access to at the bottom. I'm just going to maybe add cuts in where these loosely line up. And then, if I pull this back a little bit, I don't know if this is going to work, but what happens if we extrude this out and kind of rotate it? This is going to at least get us somewhere. So now we have this squared off area. If I merge these vertices off, excuse me, if I square these or merge these vertices off and sort of make this just a big quad at the bottom and merge this, we can combine these two meshes, and we should be able to select these two loops and bridge them to one another. So it's not the most glorious thing at the moment, but they're attached, which is definitely a step in the right direction. So I think the next phase of this is going to be smoothing it out. Start by raising all of these guys, slowly adjusting everything. But if I guess I can't really pull this out because all these faces are on a very awkward angle and transition. I guess pulling it up isn't that bad. Say if I grab this and pull it up, it looks like more of a smooth transition, which is working pretty well. I kind of want to get kind of want to get this face to merge into it as well. Simply because it looks really odd having it round and then go straight. But if it was like curve, 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 transition, that would look more natural. So I'm going to experiment. If I delete these guys and I simply extrude this edge and say snap it here, it's a smoother transition. We need somewhere to connect it to on the back though, because it's just going to be a vert floating. So I'm going to have to add an edge loop here. So now that actually connects to something, and we can merge all these vertices that are just sort of floating on top of each other. Are these two connected? Yeah, and these are connected. These are connected. Interesting. I think it's probably this bottom piece that's the problem now. If I add an edge loop here, I can bridge these. I'm just trying to fill the hole essentially. I can bridge these. Got another one of these problems where it's a edge resting on an edge that aren't necessarily connected. And now we can fill this hole. We did some cleanup like that before at the start. Here's another example. So I'm just trying to select this triangle edge loop. For some reason it's getting this edge here. I'm trying to figure out why. So I'm just clicking on edges and seeing if there's anything overlapping without being merged. Once again, we can try and just merge verts and then turn it up a little bit to like 0.01 and say, no, that didn't solve it. Maybe sometimes putting your camera through the mesh can reveal something. Interesting. What am I missing here? These all seem to be tris and quads, so I don't know why this would be connected. A workaround for this is we can extract one edge, and with that edge selected, hold shift right click, merge edges to center, and then we can just snap that vert off and merge everything together. So that will also close it off, and that's getting us the look we're going for. On this side, I kind of want something similar. So let's delete those. And if I extrude this, we're essentially doing the exact same thing where I snap this to the side and say, hey, we're going to need somewhere to connect this to. Snap the vert to the vert. Merge everything. Yeah, we got the same issue where I double click this loop and it goes all the way through. Which is odd because everything's merged. We still have our workaround though, where we extrude the edges and then collapse them. So let's just do it that way. Yep, merging, collapsing, and snapping. And we can go ahead and merge all of that. And that's a pretty seamless transition. I'm curious if it's usually pretty easy to spot holes in your mesh when you hit 3, because it'll start to show problematic areas. This kind of is somewhat revealing. To have such a hard edge like this is kind of unexpected when you soften. So if I hit 1 again, it's a little bit odd to see that. But we've merged everything, so I'm not quite sure what problem it could be causing. I'm going to leave it for now. Yeah, just because there's no point in really dwelling on it too much. Let's go ahead and clean up a lot of this geo by snapping it to the nearby vertices. You can do the same on the back. Can merge everything. And just kind of work on this transition a little bit. That looks pretty smooth and connecting through really nicely. One thing to do is there's definitely a hole punched out here, and it might have a hole punched out on the other side. I'm just going to go ahead and boolean through to both sides. Just to get those nice smooth transitions. So I just duplicated this cylinder. I'm going to shift select this guy just so we have them isolated. And let's sort of set up a nice Boolean mesh here. Like so. Can click our main mesh or have both of them selected and freeze transformations, delete history. But have our main mesh selected, shift select our Boolean mesh, go to bool, new Boolean operation, clean up, delete history and base objects, and that should do it for that. Cool, we can just sort of mirror all this over now, and we're done that whole back part. I guess since we had so much done from previously, it kind of sped things up quite a bit. Oh, I just thought this like was a rounded piece, but it's definitely this in the background. Okay, let's go ahead and duplicate this all over. The easiest way to do that is I'm going to just add a cut in the middle so we have something to put our pivot on. I'm going to try something actually. I'm not sure if this will work, but let's go ahead and try and select all of this. Hit Control G to group it so it's all acting as one, and move our pivot to the center. Can we mirror the group? No, it's doing it all by its local pivot. I guess it was worth a shot. So we're gonna have to mirror these guys individually, which isn't gonna take us that long. So just moving the pivot there, hitting mirror X, guy popped up over there. Do the same for this guy. Nice. Get these small red pieces in here. Yep, everything's lining up properly. And then finally the screws. I'm going to actually combine these two. There's no point having them as independent because they're always going to be together. And mirror over X. Cool. Since we mirrored them though, they're going to be the same mesh when we click on them. We can separate them, but I think it's just easier to keep track of them this way. So I'm going to keep it like that. And then we can go ahead and delete this. I also believe that we never really lined this side up with anything. So let's just snap that here. Cool. And that does it for that part. I believe next we had the bottom part as our sort of go-to task. This one definitely seems quite a bit more intimidating. Yeah, so we got this all complete. Let's sort of reference where this all connects. So I think if I'm not mistaken, this cylinder here we already lined up one of the cylinders, and I believe this is the one. I believe this cylinder is supposed to be this part here. I'm just trying to remember what this cylinder was, but I guess that makes sense. It's something totally different. So this guy here, we have lined up to be this guy. I'm going to thin it out a little bit. It seems a little bit too big for that specific pipe. This is an interesting one because it seems to be thin all the way across, but it has these components where they drop down into a second pipe. And this is our clearest reference as to what's going on. We also have this guy. But it kind of just seems like, yeah, it's like a figure 8 shape, drops into a different pipe, connects back up. The only question I'm having is if it drops down to a second pipe all the way across, or if it keeps coming up, because it kind of looks like it's going all the way across, but then there's this shape here, which is very reminiscent of this one. Let's see if we can find another reference. If not, we'll just continue it all the way along. Like, this is the side profile of it. It's one of those angles where it's kind of hard to see in most of the references. Yeah, you can't really tell with that one. Too dark. You can see it, but once again, too dark. Top view isn't very good for it. Huh. So I guess, like, this is kind of our best view of it, but yeah, it has this like figure 8. But there's a lot more going on. I think how we're going to handle this part is we're going to have the secondary pipe continue all the way along underneath it. And these sort of pipes, or these figure 8s, are going to connect the two pipes continuously throughout. There's going to be other brackets in between, but we're just going to have several of these connecting them. So another thing to keep in mind is we're going to be needing a second pipe. So let's go ahead and select this guy, smart duplicate it. It seems to be directly underneath, so I'm just going to move it like so. I'm going to still mess with the scale on this a little bit. I feel like it can be thinner. I seem to have smart duplicated some faces back here that I shouldn't have. It's okay. Let's just get a tiny gap between the two. And then even kind of pull it in a little bit. It doesn't happen right away. The drop down, I mean. So pulling it in a little bit. We're going to have to cap off the ends of everything. So I'm selecting the loops on each end and shift right click fill hole. And let's start to make this shape here. It's a figure 8 with holes punched out for both pipes to go through, as well as some sort of cut in here. This kind of looks like it's hard to tell if it's extruding in or out. I think it's extruding out, actually, now that I look at it, simply because of how the light is hitting it in the top left, just like it is here. This one, though, is definitely being cut in at the bottom. So we can go ahead and make that shape. It shouldn't be too difficult for us to do that. In order to do that, I'm going to Smart duplicate this face. And extrude it. Make sure everything's the proper normal orientation. And we can scale this guy up a little bit. We can then duplicate this guy, snap him up here, and this is pretty much our figure 8 shape. We're just gonna have to combine the two. So let's go ahead and isolate them. Mesh, combine, and then let's say like the 4 here and 4 here we can just get rid of. And it's as easy as bridging it over. Can collapse these edges. Cool. Just hitting G to repeat last command, and for those who don't remember, shift right click, merge edges to center. Just gonna just gonna merge these verts to the side. And actually, you might as well just merge everything off. From there, what we can do is add a slice in the middle and just continue to scale it in a little bit so it's a bit smoother. Now let's try and get the thickness a bit more appropriate. It's a bit chunkier, a bit more like that. I do want to play with the scale of it actually, now that I'm looking at it. It might be too big. And the best way to do this is because, since we can't shrink it like this, because it's going to throw off these things being centered, if we select all the vertices and we double click on our move tool, we can change this to normal and scale it this way. And it's pushing things in based on the normal. Which means these guys are going to stay centered, and this is looking a lot better now that it's thinned out. Nice. We can change that back to world. Cool. Next step would be to cut the holes in the side. So just another basic Boolean operation. Let's go ahead and Control D, duplicate both of these. We only really need a few parts here, so I'm going to combine them, select these two edge loops, and do Control I, Shift I, I thought it was Control Shift I, that's what it is, to invert them, delete everything, since we just need these two guys. And we can go ahead and use them as our Boolean meshes. So let's go ahead and cap off these ends just by selecting the edges on the side. Fill hole. And yeah, we can select both of these, freeze transformations, delete history. But by selecting our main mesh, shift selecting our Boolean, new Boolean operation, clean up, delete history and base objects, we can kind of get our shape here pretty much all set to go. The only things we're gonna have to do now is this little circular piece and this cutout here on the bottom. Let's start off with the cutout on the bottom, because that's probably going to take a little bit more time, but it's pretty easy as well. So what I'm going to do for this guy is add an edge loop cut in the middle, and let's actually isolate this. Add an edge loop cut in the middle. I'm going to bevel it, so we're trying to get a cut in along the bottom here. So with this beveled, I can sort of say how wide do I want this to be, about yay wide. And I can select faces on the bottom like so. We can then smart duplicate these faces and extrude them. I'm going to extrude them out a little bit, but mainly the important part here is that we're going to extrude them in a little bit. And this is what we're going to use as our Boolean mesh. So we're going to make this very small, like 0.01, maybe a bit more, 0.03. Yeah, and then we can just delete these original edge loops and use this as a Boolean mesh. So just like we did before, new Boolean operation, delete history and base objects, and we got that cut in there, just like in the reference, quick and easy. I might even play with it a little bit where I scale it in like so, and lower it, just so it has a bit of a bevel to it. Nice. And then as for this, I honestly think it might just be easier to model that completely in ZBrush because it's just a little dot. So I think I'm just going to leave that for now. But yeah, let's see how we want to set this up. We have a connection piece. I can't really tell what's going on in there. Excuse me. This is definitely a different type of bracket, but this, I'm not totally sure. This is the other side, so this is definitely on the other end as well. It's a repeating element. Yeah, it's hard to tell. I think what we're going to do is let's make this bracket here and then just have a pattern of going back and forth between this and this throughout. I think that's kind of the best way to approach this, just because we don't really fully understand what's going on in there. And there's just not going to be any reference. Like, I'm sure somewhere on the internet there is reference, but it's just far too difficult to find a decent shot of someone sticking their camera in with good lighting at that exact angle. So we're just going to we're going to choose our battles here, and we can go ahead and start working on this piece here, which shouldn't be too difficult. Let's smart duplicate this face again, scale it up a little bit, and snap it up here. Let's see exactly what we're trying to make. We can extrude this out a little bit and scale it up. Let's fix our normals by reversing all the black faces. It's kind of like a bell shape, kind of like so. That's how I'm reading it, at least. Something along those lines. Maybe this is even a little bit rounder. The whole thing's a bit longer. And then I'm just going to, of course, extrude this in. Extrude this in. And delete both of those faces so that we can bridge them to one another. Nice. Can auto smooth that. And that's pretty much that piece there. Excuse me. So let's think about the best way to approach this. We have all these pieces. We know that this is going to be on the other end as well. So let's start with that, so we have some sort of boundaries. And put a cut directly in the middle. Let's duplicate this so we have a spare one on the side, but essentially I can move my pivot here to the middle, mirror across X. We have this on the other side. So yeah, how are we going to determine how often these are? We can make it as simple as say, hey, this is in the middle, and we're just going to sort of duplicate it. Like so, and then just sort of like do something like that. I'm really trying to think here what the best way to go about this is. Let's delete this midpoint. We could do it. Where we put one in the middle. I'm just snapping to the grid. And then, let's start by adding a cut right in the middle. Which I'm going to then snap this guy to. We can then add a cut to the middle of each of those. Which we can then snap these two. And then we can start snapping these to their relative position. To do that, I'm going to move this pivot to the edge of this guy, which means we know that if we... Sorry about that. What I was saying was if we take our pivot and snap it to the edge of this guy, we then know if we duplicate it and snap it to the edge of this guy, that these are always going to be the same distance apart. And we can kind of do that all the way across. And then we wouldn't need one on this side. So let's just have this all selected in case we need to re-isolate it. But like it's doing a pretty good job of selling the same look. The only complaint I have is like something is going on here. It's kind of difficult to tell. It almost even looks like oh, I guess I duplicated that guy who was doubled up. It almost kind of looks like one of these pieces, but just sort of elongated. It also seems to be... it's hard to say. But what I'm trying to say is it kind of just looks like a longer version. So maybe if we just have a long one on each side, that would probably suffice. It's hard to get it symmetrical because they're not really, they're different on each side, right? So doing something like that. Yeah, I'm gonna say that's good for that. So let's go ahead and save. Right, and where does that take us to? I think before we do these, it would probably make the most sense to finally finish up this bottom part. We definitely have these sort of metal plates here that are loosely connecting this stuff. Yeah, and then there's another cylinder spanning across the whole thing. I think we completed 2 parts, so that should probably do it for this section of the tutorial. But we'll get these parts done. They seem like they should be relatively quick. And then we can move on to this, which is definitely a bit more exciting, capping off the end piece. And then that would be, that's all of the inner cylinder at that point. So we definitely got through this part a lot faster than I thought. Once we started tackling it, we should probably be able to wrap it up. Just looking at it, these are all pretty simple shapes. This will take probably not too long, but I don't want to underestimate things anymore. There's a pretty good chance we could get it done in the next part. But anyways, guys, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next part of this tutorial. Have a good day.